Hello everyone, Mo Recap here. Today I'm going to explain a drama, fantasy, and crime film from 1999 titled The Green Mile. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. A group of men with guns race through wheat fields, praying they're not too late to save two missing children. Flash forward. An old man named Paul Edgecomb wakes up in a nursing home. Even though he's old, his mind is still sharp. After washing up, he asks for just 2 pieces of dry toast. One worker figures out Paul's planning a secret hike in the mountains, but promises to keep quiet, telling him only to be careful.
No damn search party.
Paul heads out, finding his way to an old cabin in the woods. That evening, back at the home, everyone's watching the classic movie Top Hat on TV. Something about the film hits Paul hard. Tears run down his face. His close friend Elaine sits beside him, offering comfort. They talk about how memories can hit you without warning, crashing down when you least expect them. 60 years earlier, Paul worked at a prison during the Great Depression. Jobs were hard to find, and he held on to his position tightly. As head guard of Death Row, he ran a block known as the Last Mile, though everyone called it the Green Mile because of the color of its floor tiles. They had an electric chair there. The guards called it Old Sparky. One year stood out above all others, 1935. That summer, Paul got a painful bladder infection. His co-workers, Brutal and Dean, told him to take time off and see a doctor, but Paul refused. He had to be there. A new prisoner was coming. Soon, a van pulls up to the prison entrance. Rookie guard Percy and experienced officer Harry bring in the newest prisoner. The man stepping out is huge, so tall he makes even Brutal, a big man himself, look small. Percy, however, is a mean, cocky little man who annoys everyone on staff. Paul greets the barefoot giant, asking if he expects any trouble. The huge prisoner looks like he could easily overpower the entire staff, yet he looks nervous and scared. He quietly calls Paul boss and walks into his cell without fighting. Paul tells Percy to leave the block, but the rookie resists until the other guards force him out. Dell, another prisoner, laughs at the awkward scene. Angry at being laughed at, Percy breaks Dell's fingers with his stick.
Once Percy finally leaves, Paul orders the new prisoner's chains removed. It becomes clear the man has learning problems, barely able to write his own name. He introduces himself, Coffey, like the drink, only not spelled the same. The giant shyly asks if they leave lights on at night. Turns out he's afraid of the dark. Luckily, hallway lights stay on all night long. He reaches toward Paul, wanting to shake hands. The guards get tense, worried he might crush their boss, but Paul senses no danger. Before letting go, Coffey says something strange.
I tried to take it back, but it was too late.
Paul asks for the prisoner's file. Harry tells him about the terrible crime. 2 young sisters were kidnapped from their home. The father and villagers chased after the kidnapper, finding John Coffey sitting on the ground holding the torn bodies of both girls. He was screaming, crying, as if suddenly realizing what he'd done. The father almost killed Coffey right there, but others pulled him back. The official injury report shocks Paul deeply. Warden Hal Moores shows up while Paul reads. Paul asks about Hal's wife, Melinda, who's having terrible headaches. Work-wise, they have a big job ahead, preparing for prisoner Bitterbuck's execution. Paul must also be careful with Percy since he's related to the governor, making it impossible to fire him. However, Percy wants to transfer to a mental hospital, clearly interested in crazy people. Paul thinks Percy could have transferred long ago. He's just hanging around to see an execution up close. If watching someone die will finally get rid of Percy, the guards are more than willing to make it happen. At home, Paul lies awake, unable to sleep. He can't understand how God would let someone like Coffey do such evil. His wife tries comforting him, inviting him to bed, but Paul says no, blaming the infection. The next day brings something unusual. A fearless mouse walks right down the hallway. Brutal throws him some food, and the little guy runs into the padded cell used for violent prisoners, currently just a messy storage room filled with junk. The guards search the place completely, finding nothing. Then suddenly the mouse comes back as if nothing happened. Percy sees him and loses control, trying to stomp the mouse flat, but again the creature escapes into storage. Other guards hear the noise and show up. They decide to let Percy tire himself out searching, just to mess with him. He spends hours moving boxes with no results, eventually getting yelled at for making too much noise. Paul explains it's their job to keep things calm. These death row prisoners are mentally weak. Too much pressure might cause them to break, possibly hurting themselves or others. Percy ignores this, insulting both prisoners and fellow guards. Brutal grabs him by the throat before Paul steps in. Everyone knows Percy could pull strings and cost people their jobs, but Paul's had enough. He tells Percy straight, they're ready to lose their jobs if he crosses the line again. And next time, nobody's holding back. Later, Bitterbuck says goodbye to his wife and daughter, while guards practice the execution. An old janitor plays the prisoner, cracking dirty jokes throughout while being strapped into Old Sparky.
Gravy on the taters. I want to shit in your hat. I get to have Mae West sit on my face, 'cause I'm one horny motherfucker.
The guards can't help laughing. Dark humor keeps them sane. Paul, as boss, scolds them, though he understands. No smiles allowed during real executions. Percy watches everything with sick interest. Before putting the metal cap on the prisoner's head, they place a wet sponge underneath. This makes the electricity go through faster, making death quicker, more humane. That evening, they shave the top of Bitterbuck's head so electricity flows better. Paul sits with him for one final talk. Bitterbuck explains his belief. If someone truly regrets their sins, they get to return after death to relive their happiest moment. For him, a camping trip with his wife when they were just 18, sitting by a fire in the mountains, talking until sunrise. Paul quietly says he believes that too. Maybe that's heaven. Still, Bitterbuck is terrified. Paul does his best to calm him down. That night, they strap him into the electric chair with witnesses watching through glass. A guard announces the procedure. Electricity will pass through his body until death occurs. May God have mercy on his soul. Brutal pulls the switch. Terrible screams fill the room. When the doctor checks for a pulse, the man is still alive. A second shock finishes the job in silence. Afterward, Percy can't resist.
If Adios, Chief, drop us a card from hell. Let's know if it's hot enough.
Brutal shoves him aside, wheeling the body out. Later, Paul talks with Percy about finally transferring out of death row. But Percy isn't happy. He doesn't just want to watch the next execution. He wants to run it himself. Paul hesitantly agrees. The next day, the little mouse returns, crawling right into Dell's cell. The prisoner instantly falls in love, naming him Mr. Jingles. The mouse proves really smart, following commands and rolling a thread spool like a circus performer. Even Percy seems impressed, offering an empty cigar box as a home. Later, Hal brings news. A new prisoner's coming. William Wharton, nicknamed Wild Bill, a man who's done terrible things. His death sentence is for murdering 3 people, including a pregnant woman. Then Hal breaks down. It's not just work. His wife Melinda has been told she has a huge brain tumor that can't be removed. There's no hope. Hal doesn't know how to tell her. That night, Paul's pain gets worse. He plans to finally see a doctor. But first, they must bring in Wild Bill. Morning comes. Dean, Harry, and Percy go get him from the mental ward. Drugs make Bill look like a zombie, but the moment they bring him onto the mile, Paul already sweating from fever, Wild Bill drops the act. He headbutts Percy, throws a chain around Dean's neck. Paul tries helping but gets hit between the legs, falling down from pain. Old Harry can't hold back the crazy prisoner either. Percy just stands frozen like a scared statue. Only when Brutus shows up and knocks Wild Bill out does the chaos end. He stares at the knocked out man, wondering out loud how the world even makes people like this. Paul sends injured guards to the doctor, telling others to write reports. He stays behind watching the mile, barely able to stand from pain. John Coffey calls to him. Paul mutters this really isn't a good time, but still walks closer, dragging his feet. Suddenly, Coffey grabs him, pulling him against the bars. Dell shouts for help, but before anyone can do anything, Coffey puts his huge hand right over Paul's infected area. The cell's light bulb gets super bright and breaks. Coffey lets go, coughing hard. From his mouth comes a cloud of black smoke that floats upward and disappears. Coffey tells Paul he took the pain away, saying he's totally worn out. He falls onto his bed, passing out immediately. Paul stumbles to the bathroom in shock, realizing the pain has completely gone. He feels reborn. That night, Paul and his wife stay in bed together, lost in each other and memories of their youth. The next morning, Paul takes the day off, visiting Coffey's lawyer. The lawyer explains there's no record of Coffey's past. It's as if he appeared out of nowhere. Paul refuses to believe Coffey's violent, but the lawyer stands by the guilty verdict, comparing Coffey to a family dog, sweet and quiet until one day it suddenly attacked his son without warning. The boy lost an eye. The next day, Paul brings John cornbread his wife made. When asked how she liked it, John smiles, saying she was very happy. John shares the bread with Dell and Mr. Jingles. Bill asks for some too, but gets ignored. The prisoner starts saying racist insults at Coffey. Paul walks over to shut him up. Bill responds by spitting right in Paul's face. This kind of behavior is normal for Wild Bill. To shut him down, guards blast him with a fire hose and throw him in the isolation cell. Bill promises he'll behave, but instead buys a pie from the janitor and throws it at Brutus's face. Back to the box he goes. Dell's execution is coming, but he has no family for goodbyes. So guards put on a show, pretending to be circus workers who came just to see the famous performing mouse. Meanwhile, Paul watches over Percy during execution practice. Everything goes perfectly. Afterward, Percy sees Dell happily return to his cell and seems ready to make peace, but then suddenly scares Dell as a joke, making him fall and hit his head. Percy laughs, saying it was just a prank. While he's distracted, Wild Bill reaches through bars, grabbing Percy and touching him while whispering threats. He lets go just as quickly, leaving Percy shaking. Morton makes fun of Percy, comparing him to a little girl. Dell laughs like crazy. Percy, terrified, wets himself. Burning with shame, he begs others to keep his embarrassment secret. Paul calmly tells him, what happens on the mile stays on the mile. Dell keeps teasing him anyway. Finally, Dell's execution day comes. He gets worried about Mr. Jingles' future. Paul promises to care for the mouse himself, but Dell worries the creature would be scared living near woods by Paul's house. That's when Brutus gets creative, making up Mouseville, a huge circus tent with an entire mouse city where mice perform for crowds and live in luxury. Dell's eyes light up like Christmas morning. He believes every word. To him, Mouseville sounds like heaven. Suddenly, the spool drops. Mr. Jingles runs into the hallway, chasing it. To everyone's horror, Percy stomps down with his boot, crushing the mouse. Then, without a word, walks away. Dell screams in heartbreak. Coffey quietly reaches out, telling them to hurry. Paul gently picks up the broken little body, handing it to Coffey. The giant brings the mouse close, breathing into him. A burst of light fills the room. Then, as if nothing happened, Mr. Jingles runs straight back to Dell, alive and perfectly fine. Coffey again coughs up dark smoke. The guards stand speechless. Paul and Brutus go after Percy. Paul tells him the mouse is alive, adding that Percy's as bad at killing mice as everything else. Percy's shocked and angry, thinking it's some big prank to make him look stupid. Brutus grabs him again. Paul lays out the deal. Percy disappears after Dell's execution. If he doesn't, the guards will beat him and tell the truth under oath about every terrible thing he's done, including being a coward. They shake hands, making it official. That night, Dell walks calmly toward his execution. He puts Mr. Jingles on Paul's shoulder, asking him to care for his friend. Since the mouse can't stay with Paul during the ceremony, Coffey takes him instead, holding the tiny creature close. Dell says goodbye, telling the little guy he loves him. As guards lead him to the chair, Dell's upset seeing Percy smiling from the sidelines. In his final words, Dell says sorry for his sins and begs Paul not to forget Mr. Jingles. Then Percy betrays him. He cruelly tells the truth about Mouseville, saying it was just a made-up story to keep him calm. And when it's time to wet the sponge that would make Dell's death quick and painless, Percy only pretends to dip it in water. Paul realizes too late what's happening. Percy gives the signal. The switch is pulled. Dell shakes violently in the chair, screaming in pain while the room fills with burning smell. At the same time, Coffey begins shaking in his cell, somehow feeling Dell's pain and sharing his suffering. Wharton, meanwhile, jumps with joy, laughing like crazy. Paul hopes Dell dies quickly. He's wrong. The pain goes on and on. Flames rise from Dell's body. The audience panics, running for exits. Paul grabs Percy, forcing him to watch what he's done. When screaming finally stops, Brutus tells Percy to put out the flames. Later, Percy has the nerve to say he didn't know about the sponge. Brutus has had enough. He slaps Percy across the face. Howell shows up angry, demanding answers about the madness. But Paul quickly realizes the most important thing right now is getting rid of Percy fast. So he covers for him, keeping their deal going. Then Paul checks on John, who's lying in his cell crying quietly. The big man says he felt Dell's pain. Now that it's over, he's totally worn out. Mr. Jingles, still scared, has run to hide in the padded isolation cell again. Coffey curls up to sleep. On the weekend, Paul and his wife visit Hal and Melinda. Surprisingly, Melinda's doing okay, though Hal mentions she sometimes has strange episodes, shouting curse words he didn't know she knew. The next day, Paul invites fellow guards for lunch, finally sharing how John magically cured him. He suggests something completely crazy: sneaking John Coffey out of prison for one night to help Melinda. The idea shocks everyone. If caught, they'll be arrested right away. Not to mention the risk, John's still technically a convicted murderer. But Paul, for the first time, speaks his truth. John is innocent. He's sure no murderer or rapist could have such power. That kind of gift doesn't come from evil. Eventually, he convinces them. On the night of the plan, they knock Wild Bill out with drugs strong enough to drop a horse. Then, with lots of satisfaction, they strap Percy into a straitjacket, gag him, and lock him in the padded cell. Paul tells him it's payback for Dell. Percy, still confused, doesn't suspect anything. Dean stays behind watching the mile. Being youngest with a family to protect, he can't risk being part of this. If asked, he'll say Coffey's still in isolation and the others are out running errands. Meanwhile, Coffey already knows something's happening, and he's happy. Just the chance to go for a walk fills him with joy. But as he steps from his cell, Wild Bill lunges, grabbing his arm. A flash of panic hits John and every light bulb above explodes. Bill drops unconscious again. Outside under open sky, John stands amazed. He lifts a handful of grass to his nose, breathing deeply, telling the others to do the same. For a moment, they all just breathe. The group gets into the truck, driving toward Hal's home. Somehow John already knows what's about to happen. He knows someone needs him. Hal meets them at the door, shotgun in hand, thinking it's a breakout or worse. Paul tries explaining, but Coffey calmly steps forward, sensing exactly where he needs to go. Hal hesitates, shocked, but eventually lets them inside. Coffey sits on Melinda's bed. She notices scars covering his body, proof of repeated beatings. He doesn't even remember his childhood. He gently introduces himself, leaning toward her face. When their lips touch, lights in the room get brighter. Every clock stops. The house shakes like an earthquake hit it. John takes in her sickness, the tumor entering his own body. He begins choking, but this time he doesn't let out the poison. He holds it inside. He refuses help. Then Melinda opens her eyes. She has no memory of what just happened. All she knows is she feels fine. She looks around, sees John, and introduces herself like they're meeting for the first time. Melinda tells them she dreamed of meeting John in darkness. As a gift, she gives him a necklace of St. Christopher, a giant who carried others through hard times, even at the cost of his own life. The guards gently help the sick, exhausted John into the truck. Brutal thinks maybe John purposely held on to Melinda's tumor, hoping it would kill him before they have to do the execution. They return to prison safely, laying John in his bed. Then they let Percy out of the padded cell. He hasn't learned anything. If anything, he's even angrier than before. As he walks past cells, John suddenly grabs him by the throat, pulling him close to the bars. Percy gasps for air, panicking. And just like before, Coffey breathes out a thick cloud of gray smoke right into him. The guards quickly check Percy. He seems physically okay, but his eyes are blank, completely empty. He starts walking slowly down the mile in a daze. Then, without warning, he turns, pulls a gun, and shoots all 6 bullets into Wild Bill. Percy drops to the floor as another cloud of smoke rises from his mouth. Paul, first to react, runs to Coffey. John tells him he only did what had to be done. He punished evil. When Wild Bill grabbed his arm earlier, he saw everything. Now he wants Paul to see it too. Paul reaches out. As their hands touch, he's pulled into the memory. He sees the final day of the little girls' lives. The vision is so painful his body shakes, and every light bulb on the block explodes in bright flashes. Wild Bill had been working at the girls' home with their father, even eating dinner with the family. That night, he came back and led the sisters into the woods, threatening that if one screamed, he'd kill the other. They stayed quiet. Their love for each other is what killed them. John tells Paul he feels pain like that everywhere, all the time. It never stops. He can't take it anymore. Later, Hal and police show up. Percy is completely unresponsive, staring into space. Hal asks Paul if what happened at his house connects to Bill's death. Paul lies. He knows the truth wouldn't help anyone. In the end, Percy is finally transferred to the mental hospital, but as a patient, not staff. Now Paul faces the one thing he can't ignore. John Coffey is a good man, a holy man, the last person on earth who deserves to die in the electric chair. Paul's done a lot in his life, but if he lets this happen, he knows he's going straight to hell. He talks to his wife about it. She suggests asking John what he wants. Maybe that's where the answer is. With just 2 days left, Paul visits John. The gentle giant sees the pain in Paul's heart and asks him not to worry. He doesn't want freedom. He's tired of walking this world alone, Tired of feeling everyone's pain every single day, death would be relief. As his last wish, John asks for a slice of that sweet cornbread he remembers. And one other thing, he's never seen a movie before. The guards are happy to help. They bring him to the warden's screening room to watch Top Hat, the same film that made Paul cry at the retirement home. John stares in wonder as dancers move across the screen. He whispers that they look like angels. Finally, execution day comes. Paul removes the necklace Melinda gave John, promising to return it when this is over. John smiles. He tells them he dreamed about Mouseville, where Mr. Jingles did tricks for two little girls, alive and happy. When they lead him into the execution room, John pauses. He can feel the hatred coming from people in the gallery, especially the girls' sad parents. Some even say he should be executed twice just to suffer more. Brutal gently tells him to focus on the guards instead, the ones who know the truth and care deeply for him. Dean ties him to the chair with tears running down his face. Paul tries staying strong, keeping his face cold and professional. As he reads out the sentence, they put the black hood over John's head, but John begs. He doesn't want to be left in darkness. He's afraid of it. Paul respects his wish and leaves the hood off, soaking the sponge with water. Everyone in the room waits for the order. Paul hesitates. He can't speak. Instead, he walks up and takes John's hand one last time. In his mind, he keeps hearing the same words over and over. They're helping kill him, and it happens every day. It's so unfair, so wrong. Finally, Paul gives the command. On two. The execution is quick. There are no screams, just silence and the sound of grown men quietly crying. Afterward, Paul gently puts the St. Christopher necklace back around John's neck. Back in the present, Paul finishes telling the story. That was the last execution he ever did. After that, he and Brutal transferred to work with troubled kids, helping guide them onto the right path. Elaine doesn't quite believe everything Paul's told her. After all, he should be much older than he looks. So Paul brings her on a walk. They arrive at an old cabin in the woods. Inside, tucked in a cigar box, lives an old friend. Mr. Jingles, the same little mouse, still rolling his spool around like always. Elaine is shocked. Paul explains that after John's execution, the mouse came back to him, and just like with Paul, John's healing touch passed some of his gift onto the little creature. Paul is now 108 years old. He's lived longer than everyone he's ever known, and he believes this long life is part of the punishment he got for helping to kill a true miracle. Now he's buried Elaine too. Of course, he knows he won't live forever, but he'll live long past the point he's ready to say goodbye. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. See you in the next one.